Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, I'm Ernie Humphrey, the Chief Operating Officer for TreasuryJobs.com. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us for our webinar today, Accounts Payable Automation. You can't afford to get left behind. I would like to thank our sponsor today, Use, whose strong commitment to thought leadership helps us make this webinar possible. Before I delve into the content, I'm going to offer a few quick words about TreasuryJobs.com, cover a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to review our learning objectives as they represent the components of our value proposition to you in sharing your valuable time with us today. Accounts Payable has been undergoing a paradigm shift from a back office afterthought to a core strategic business function. Today, you're going to learn why your company can't afford to get left behind in the arena of accounts payable automation. Today, I will discuss the ROI you can achieve from automating your accounts payable process and how to develop an effective business case for investing in AP automation at your company. You'll also discover how companies of all sizes are realizing lower invoicing processing costs, mitigating payments risk, and improving supplier relationships through AP automation. Now, a few quick words about TreasuryJobs.com. We connect Treasury talent with the right opportunities, and we endeavor to be a trusted career resource for Treasury professionals. We already serve some of the largest companies in the world, over 300 of the Fortune 1000 already. We only post Treasury jobs. We offer Treasury certification resources. We offer complimentary webinars like this one today. We offer a Treasury career blog, which offers actionable advice to fuel Treasury career success, and we offer all of this at no cost to you with the help of our great sponsors such as Use. A few housekeeping items for today, the exciting part of the webinar. The slides are currently available under the handouts area in your GoToWebinar control panel. We will send you links via email to the presentation and the recording of the webinar within the next 24 hours. Important point, for those of you interested in the CTP credit, you need to answer all the polling questions and remain on for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions regarding CTP credit, please send me an email to ernie@treasuryjobs.com. Again, any CTP credit questions, please send me an email to ernie@treasuryjobs.com. I'd like to hear from you today, so please ask your questions at any time in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll do my best to get to all of your questions during the Q&A session at the tail end of the webinar. If I do not get to your questions, I will follow up with you directly to answer the question. Finally, I appreciate your consideration in taking a short survey at the end of the webinar today, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable time. Now let's talk about our learning objectives. Again, our value proposition for you sharing your valuable time with us today. After the webinar, you'll be able to calculate the potential savings of AP automation for your company. You'll be able to define the benefits of improved productivity across the enterprise attributable to AP automation at your company, and you'll be able to construct and communicate an effective business case for AP automation at your company. A few other learning objectives that I have for the webinar today, which helps set our webinars apart from any other webinar that you will ever experience. One, I want to make you smile. Yes, AP automation can be fun, and yes, a webinar can be entertaining. Secondly, I want to make you think. So I want to make you think about the AP processes, AP automation, how you can make accounts payable deliver more strategic value at your company. How can you partner better with those who focus on the AP function at your company? And thirdly, and most importantly, I want everyone to take an action from this webinar. Whether that action is reaching out to me for a LinkedIn connection, going to treasuryjobs.com, going to the Use website, taking an AP colleague out to lunch. So the ROI for this webinar, I want to extend well beyond the content that we cover today. And one of the things that we'll cover at the tail end of the webinar is additional resources. So I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly how to run AP at your company and deliver the most strategic value. However, I'm going to give you a great starting point, give you a landscape of the technology out there, teach you how to develop and communicate that business case, and I'm going to give you some actionable advice how to connect to the resources, but also to connect to your colleagues who are AP leaders at their company so you can get their insights as you go on your journey to AP automation. So how are we going to cover our learning objectives today? Well, first we're going to talk about why accounts payable matters. And accounts payable seems to have mattered much more, especially in the Treasury arena over the last year. I am a former Treasury professional. I was a Treasury practitioner for 8 years. I've been speaking on various Treasury topics over the last 10 years. Probably the previous 9 years, I have never been asked to speak on accounts payable or accounts payable automation. Over the last year, I think I have been asked 10 times. So we'll talk about why AP matters, which is great because it is long overdue, and there is a tremendous amount of value that can be gained from focusing and investing on improving accounts payable at your company. Then we'll talk about some of the common accounts payable pain points, and some of these pain points will help us in developing our value proposition for AP automation. For those of you who might be Treasury leaders and CFOs, it's probably going to be pretty enlightening to you as we dive into the weeds of accounts payable. I had the opportunity to work closely with the accounts payable team when I was a Treasury practitioner, and believe me, I had no idea all that was involved in the accounts payable process, and I know it's gotten even more complicated and complex over the last 5 to 10 years. If you've never done this exercise before, one of the things we'll talk about is how you need to have a detailed mapping of the entire accounts payable process at your company. If you haven't seen this, you'll be amazed at the amount of people and systems that are involved in the accounts payable process. Then we'll talk about automation and how it can be the cure for accounts payable headaches, and we'll take a look at the functionality that some of these AP automation solutions offer, which is fantastic. I wish I would have had this technology when I was a Treasury practitioner. So we'll talk about what you want to look for, and then we'll talk about also the implementation of this technology as well and how it's a game changer. So those of you who have ever been involved in the implementation of something such as an ERP system, it used to take us 1 to 2 years, and there were a lot of headaches associated with that 1 to 2 year journey. With some of these accounts payable automation solutions, you can get up and rolling in 1 to 2 weeks. Yes, it's hard to believe, but that can actually happen. Then we'll talk about the strategic outcomes of AP automation and ROI. So you invest in this AP automation. Okay, what are the strategic outcomes of AP automation? How does that lower your invoice cost? How does that impact productivity across the enterprise? How does that improve supplier relationships? How does that impact working capital optimization at your company? And then we'll talk about the business case for AP automation. So as a Treasury professional, I suffered from this as well. No one ever taught me how to make a business case to win investment for Treasury. So I know this all too well. If you walk into your CFO's office and tell him you want to invest in AP automation, he's probably going to give you a funny look, and he might actually kick you out of his office. So you better have your ducks in a row if you're going to make that case to the CFO about investing in AP automation. The good news is that the business case for AP automation is actually fairly easy to construct. There are many, many components to that business case, but there's 2 parts to that business case. One is effectively communicating that business case in written form electronically, and almost as importantly is how you communicate that business case to your stakeholders. So there's 2 sets of stakeholders you have in terms of winning that investment for your AP automation. One is the people that need to improve your investment. So let's say you're an AP leader. You have to get the Treasury manager's approval, the accounting manager's approval, the controller's approval, maybe the CFO's approval. And so they need to approve your investment. But just as importantly is those who are going to be involved in the execution of your AP automation project. Who are the folks that are going to be impacted in terms of improving the AP process at your company? So you'll want to involve them up front. You'll want to include them in your business case development. You want to understand any changes that you make regards to people, process, and technology are really run through those people that are impacted. You will be amazed how easy it is to turn people who are known as Mr. No into your advocate. You'll be able to create a buzz about AP automation in your company. Yes, imagine this. You are walking down the hallway in your finance department, and you hear people talking about the AP automation project, or go into your accounting department. Believe me, it can be exciting. And then we'll wrap things up with some closing thoughts and resources. Again, resources are important. So you're not going to get everything that you need today out of the webinar. So we only have a limited amount of time together. However, very important. Ask the right questions. See where you're at, where you want to be, and then how you can get there. What resources do you have available to you? What can you get access to for free? Who should you reach out to? How do you vet the potential solutions, and how do you make those connections with your accounts payable colleagues? So in order to level set a little bit today, we're going to go ahead and launch our first polling question. So I want to get a level set for everyone and get a sense of some of the potential objections that you might be seeing in terms of delivering an AP automation solution at your company. So a few quick logistical reminders. Of course, I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all the polling questions that we asked today. Again, those of you on the line who are interested in CTP credits for today's webinar, you will need to answer all the polling questions that we asked today. And I'm going to say this multiple times, so excuse me if I repeat it 5 times, but I will. We can take your questions in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel at any time during the webinar day. Each and every one of you has a specific reason for being on the webinar today. So I want to make absolutely certain that you are getting out what you want from the webinar. So I encourage you, maybe you'll ask a little later in the webinar, but I want to make sure that you get out what you want from the webinar. Again, I was a longtime Treasury practitioner. I've attended several webinars, and sometimes I didn't feel like I got my ROI out of my time. So been in your seat. So please let us know whatever we can do to make sure that we offer you the ROI you deserve for your valuable time. So I'm going to go ahead and close the polling question. We're going to take a quick look at the results, and then we're going to get back to our content. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. Looks like we've got a good percentage of people. And then I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So it looks like, you know, the top priorities, you want to reduce the time it takes to process the AP invoices. So this is key. So one of the things that we'll talk about, some of the struggles that folks have in terms of accounts payable is the amount of time that it just takes to process an invoice. So a lot of companies probably have access to discounts, but the fact that their AP processes take so long, it doesn't even allow them to take those discounts, and not taking those discounts can be a huge disadvantage to your company. So that can be incredibly value and impact the bottom line. Secondly, we have reducing the money spent on the invoicing process. So this is key as well. So we'll show some benchmarking numbers, and some of you will be amazed how much it costs to process a single invoice. So there are many ways to reduce the money spent. And then B is kind of related to that. Some of that's related to reducing the number of people working in the accounts payable process. However, part of what I'll talk about is that some of the benefits to AP automation is not necessarily reducing the amount of people that are involved. It's having them use their time more strategically. So one of the things that we'll talk about is how can you assign a value to the time that is spent. So let's say you do a lot of manual keying on your invoicing. So what's the value to eliminating those hours spent by a certain individual on manually keying in invoices to a more value-add activity? For example, focusing on taking discounts, focusing on supplier relationships. So one of the things that we'll talk about is the strategic value of that time, which is often missed, and you have to make sure you align on the assumptions of what that value is. But that is it's not that difficult to do. So why accounts payable? Why now? So why is this such a hot topic? Well, one of the couple reasons is in terms of the technology, advances of technology, the advancement of cloud-based applications. So probably about 8 or 9 years ago, we start to see cloud-based applications in the ERP systems, the CRM systems, and now finally that cloud-based technology and the focus has moved into the Treasury arena in terms of cash management, accounts payable automation, T&E automation. So it's great to see that technology get that focus in the region of Treasury. So real-time data for better cash management has become one of the top priorities for CFOs, and we'll talk about that in the next slide or the slide after that. So CFOs are realizing the value, and investors are actually looking to companies in order to optimize the deployment of cash. So that cash conversion cycle is key. So traditionally in Treasury, we focused on the accounts receivable side. We want to get paid. Well, there's a huge amount of strategic value on the accounts payable side as well, right? In terms of how we make that payment, how much it costs to make those payments, and so we'll talk about that. Why now? Payments fraud is still rampant. So there are payments risk exposures, and those exposures need to be mitigated. One way to do that is through automation. So we'll talk about some very recent survey results from the AFP 2017 Fraud and Control Study. I've got a hyperlink to that later in the presentation. Just nothing short of fascinating on what's going on in terms of payments fraud. And then why now? Again, more and more companies are realizing how much it costs, right? That visibility, how much it costs. So manual-based paper processes consume time, space, and money. So people are starting to look at that cost. What's the visibility? What are the components of that cost? How do we reduce that cost? And then companies are realizing the strategic value of improving supplier relationships. So one of those, from a selfish perspective, is negotiating discounts. So we'll talk about how valuable discounts can be. And then in this ever-changing world, more and more companies are actually forming strategic alliances with their suppliers and actually optimizing new growth channel opportunities. So I'd say over the last 5 or 6 years, we've had this big focus on customer relationship management. I think there's going to be a huge focus on supplier relationship management, and the accounts payable folks have a significant impact on that. So that starts from onboarding in terms of paying, and also in terms of providing that remittance information to our suppliers so they can apply that cash effectively. So those of you in Treasury, you know how difficult it is in terms of cash application. So if we work with suppliers who can help improve our cash application, well, you talk about a relationship building opportunity. Absolutely fantastic. And then finally, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, the right technology is affordable to any business side, and it's cost effective. So what we'll talk about is we'll start to look at, what is that hurdle in order to make this investment in AP automation affordable? And the hurdle is actually fairly low. So we'll talk about that, and it's cost effective, and it's really exciting. So for companies of all sizes to be able to realize these benefits. So we talked about the strategic value of cash. I love this diagram. So as I mentioned before, in Treasury we traditionally focused over here, right? I want my money. I sell the goods. I want the money. I want my cash. I need the cash. But here's where we have tremendous value, if not even more value. How do we optimize this side of how do we optimize the velocity? So we want to start looking at how do we deploy the cash? What is the velocity? Where are the bottlenecks? What value can we receive? So we want to look at order process. How do we receive the products? How do we process invoices? And then how do we pay for the process? So in this webinar, we'll focus on the process invoices, and we'll also start to touch on the pay for products, because there's an awful lot of strategic value that can also be leveraged in terms of how you pay your vendors, whether that's through check or electronic payments. We'll talk about how there can be tremendous value in terms of cost savings if you're able to switch your payment methods to more of electronic payments versus checks. So let's do a little bit of a deeper dive. Strategic value of cash. So we'll talk about the value in negotiating and taking discounts. So we'll talk about invoice terms. Again, I'll try to make this as simple as possible. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult in the short time that we have together today. If you have any questions about any of the content, want to go in more depth, feel free to follow up with me afterwards. So talk about invoice terms. All right, we're offered 110 net 30. What does that mean? That means I receive a 1% discount off of the total amount of the invoice if the payment is received within 10 days. So if I get that payment in the hands of my supplier within 10 days. What did we talk about earlier? The number of days it takes to process an invoice. For many companies still, that's not even feasible. So how do we get that payment made once that invoice gets into our system, you have to align with your suppliers. When does that clock start and when does that clock end? So this can be huge. 110 net 60, you receive a 1% discount if you pay within 10 days. And the net 60 just means that they're just trying to set the bar. After 60 days, they're going to start trying to charge you interest potentially. The reason I have the net 60 in this diagram is that it's a trend has been going on for probably the past year, if not more, maybe 2 years, that some companies are paying in 90 days just because they can. So I'll be interested to see if there's research that comes out, over the coming year about if that's still happening. So now some of these suppliers are, on your side, right? Some of the people are trying to pay 90 days out. My argument to that is it doesn't make sense. You would do better to negotiate discounts. So an example, let's take 110 net 30. So what is the effective interest rate? What is the opportunity cost for not taking that discount? So we take our discount percentage, which is 1%, divide it by 1 minus the discount rate, which is 0.99, and then 360 divided by the full allowed payment days minus the discount days. So 110 net 30, 30 minus 20 is 10. We do the calculation, 18.1%. What does that mean? So what does that mean to us? So in terms of a company, so let's say the invoice is for $100,000. So whatever that 1% of $100,000, what is the value to my company of having that money on hand to use for those 20 days? So what is that cost? So I can either get that 1% discount, which is that dollar amount I get for taking the discount, versus having that money on hand and missing that discount. So what does that effective interest rate mean? So you want to compare the effective interest rate to what is the opportunity cost of your alternative use of those funds. So what are the alternative use of those funds? It might be your borrowing cost if you're a net borrower. It may be the yield that you can get on your investment of that extra $10,000, whatever that number be, even the discount. So if you look at that number, 18.1%. All right, if you're a borrower, if your borrowing cost is 18.1%, you need to look at your credit revolver or something else. And then if you're making 18.1% on an investment, I would hate to see what that investment looks like, because that's got to be a really risky investment. So in general, for most companies, and the side point on this is that actually it could make sense for companies if you negotiate terms to borrow money in order to pay those discounts. So that seems kind of counterintuitive, but that's actually often the case. The problem with that is, and a lot of companies don't have the visibility into these discounts. They don't even know that they're available. They're not looking at the efficiencies. How many discounts are available to us? How are we taking advantage of those discounts? And then in terms of our procurement team, are our procurement team negotiating those discounts as we get into those contracts? So in terms of accounts payable, we should reach out to our procurement team and bring them into the conversation and show that value. And this can also increase the value that our procurement team delivers to our organization as well. So there's value in negotiating and taking those discounts. There's value in accurately forecasting cash flows. So you have that visibility for accounts payable. You know when things are coming. I was a treasury manager. I had specific instances where I wasn't informed of certain things that were coming down the pipe just because we didn't have that visibility. So if I'm a treasury professional and all of a sudden, I don't know, $1 million payment is coming, or a $2 million payment is coming because everyone submitted their T&E invoices at one time, what's going to happen to me? One, if I'm a net borrower, I'm going to have to go out and borrow money. Not good. So we borrow money we don't need. Two, let's say we have global risk exposures. I might go out and buy pesos, or I might buy euros when I don't need to. Not good. And if you're a net investor, then I'm losing the opportunity to have those funds invested for the amount of days. So also the strategic value cash. I mentioned a little bit earlier. There's value in leveraging electronic payments. The recent studies have shown that the cost of processing a check in terms of an electronic payment can be 5.5 times as much. So you want to look at how you're making those payments, and then in terms of your suppliers, getting them comfortable with receiving electronic payments on their end, helping them with that remittance invoice. So this just illustrates some of the reason why it's important, and this also helps you build that business case, right? Why is it that visibility is important? Why is it I want to get my arms around a accounts payable process better? Why do I want the visibility? What is the value to my company investing? Negotiating and taking discounts. Look at all the money that we can save. Look at how we can improve supplier relationships. Look at how we can impact the forecast, the accuracy of our forecasting cash flows. Look, it allows us to identify potential opportunities to switch the portfolio of our payment options to ones that are more cost effective. Not only cost effective, but oftentimes the workflow can also be much more efficient, and there can often be less people and systems involved in processing electronic payments. So again, this is kind of a scare tactic for folks. So if your AP is not automated, you don't have that visibility, payments fraud is rampant, and it's not going away. So in a few points here on this one, fraudsters do not discriminate in terms of company size. So the percent of organizations that experience attempted or actual payments fraud in 2016 is huge. As a former Treasury professional, I can't tell you how disturbing it is to see a check come in on your accounts payable positive pay file that is for $100,000, and it looks exactly right, and it has your actual signature on the check. So that is a pretty frightening experience. So we have to have the controls in place. But so you need to look at the payments risk exposures there. So fraudsters don't discriminate in terms of company size. Guess what? Checks are still by far most prevalent target for payment fraudsters. So I think there's some misperception in out in general, in that companies don't write checks anymore, and then fraudsters are much more focused now in terms of business email compromise scams, BEC scams, and other things. Well, take a look at this. So we have 75% here, and we are starting to see an uptick in wire transfers and BEC scams. But look at that number. There's still a 29% difference. Guess what? Here's where you are if you write checks all the time. Here's where you are if you do wire transfers. Here's how you are ACH. So just look at how optimizing the types of payments that you're sending out can help mitigate that payments risk. The overarching point again is it's important. Payments fraud is rampant, and automation can help you eliminate manual processes, the number of people involved, the number of systems involved, but can also automate controls and also offer reporting in terms of the controls in place, so you can actually track an item throughout the entire process to identify those exposures that exist and put those controls in place. So we talked about supplier management. So again, from my perspective, for certain companies, a few supplier relationships can be even more valuable than their biggest customers. So what are some supplier management pain points that are oftentimes aggravated by inefficiencies in the accounts payable process? Well, there's just a lack of visibility in terms of your suppliers. They don't have visibility into what they owe you. They might want visibility into when they're going to get paid. So there's this misalignment. There's this misalignment in terms of discounts, where discounts are offered, when they need to be received. There's untimely communication. And I used to work in manufacturing, so there's nothing worse than having a supplier chasing around a payment from you and holding goods that you need to meet your demand and production demand. So a lot of times, if you don't have the right systems in place, there's an inherent barrier which creates untimely communication. And sometimes the systems involved, they put up these collaboration barriers, and they also put relationship constraints, and there's just an inherent tension in there. So what happens in terms of supplier relationship management? we become reactive versus proactive. So when I was in Treasury, we were completely reactive. The only time I got involved with our suppliers was if there was an issue. So wouldn't it be nice if I was involved in that supplier relationship along the way and kind of collaborated on how I could offer value to my suppliers. Again, suppliers are extremely important. There are going to be times when you need special consideration. So how are you going to get that consideration? You pay on time. You negotiate discounts. You help them in terms of cash applications. So this is really a point that does not get, I don't believe, gets enough attention in terms of the strategic value of accounts payable, and something that you should pay more attention to if you're charged in owning accounts payable is that supplier relationship management. So now we'll switch to our accounts payable pain points, which are many things that give accounts payable professionals, treasury professionals, and CFOs just constant headaches. So we talked about a few of these already. Discounts lost. So discounts lost are extremely painful for your company. We took a look at that. The potential cost, that opportunity cost, can be huge. It's the guys flying and where you can't see, you don't know what you don't know, right? You're also losing opportunities to negotiate those discounts as well if you don't have that visibility. If you don't have that visibility, you can have ineffective working capital management. So yes, it's just like that. You're just flushing money down the drain. You're also flushing money down the drain if you're not taking advantage of discounts as well. If we have the pain points are, boom, we are using costly payments method. We are only using checks because that's the way we have always done it, and that's what our suppliers want, and we have no ability to negotiate just because our suppliers tell us that they can't accept those. Well, those things are no longer true. And then pain points, we have cumbersome controls. We can have manual controls. We can have people involved in the system. So one of the surveys that I had seen, just in terms of processing a PO, I think the average was that it went across the desk of 6 to 8 people, and there were 3 to 5 systems involved. So take that across the whole P2P process. And so those controls can be cumbersome. They can be manual. They can be restrictive, especially if those approval processes aren't available to be done in a mobile environment. So I can't improve those. I can't approve things on my cell phone. So that workflow stops. So again, another point I should add here is the pain points is the workflow. So your workflow. So you want to automate that workflow. In AP automation, you want to automate that workflow. An important point here. Not only do you want to automate that workflow for things that go straight through your process, you want to also automate the exception items. So one of the things that AP automation does is it mitigates the amount of exception items, but it also helps you add automation to those exception items. You're always going to have exception items, but you can actually control the workflow of those exception items as well, and not just let those exception items hang out there. An example of exception items from my Treasury experience. If it was the case that for some reason I received a US dollar check from a foreign bank, that would go into the exception item of the bank. How long would it take me to get my money? 2 months. Does that make sense? Absolutely not. Was I an unhappy customer? Absolutely. So just an example there. You want to control that exception workflow as well. Extremely important on many fronts with that relationship, but also in terms of those discounts. If you go into that exception item, if we have net 10 terms, we need to make sure that even our exception items can get through our system within 10 days. So let's start to put some numbers behind some of these pain points, and let's start to build that value proposition. So on this slide, I have some data from Ardent Partners. They are a great resource for accounts payable research. So I encourage you to go out to the Ardent Partners website. They have some great resources. So we'll talk about how to calculate to pay a single invoice, but these are some pretty amazing statistics. So on average, and again, I think the 15.5 might be some of those that are considered a little bit lagging, but $15 to pay a single invoice. Think about that for a minute. $15. How many invoices does your company process? Think about that. That to me was mind-blowing. And in terms of the internal accounts payable related, $18 to process a T&E report. So in terms of accounts payable, I look at it on two fronts. We have external accounts payable, which is our suppliers. Internally, that's our T&E, our travelers. Both of those need to be optimized. This is also eye-opening, $9.34 to cut a check. So those of you who work in Treasury, how much does it cost you for an ACH? When I was in Treasury, ACH cost me $1 or less. So think about that. Every payment that we make to a supplier, every payment going out, every single invoice, every single check, the numbers add up. It's staggering. And look at this. Here we go. 29 days receipt to pay. So how many discounts are we going to take if it takes us 29 days? Over in the right column, fantastic. Your savings with AP automation. In terms of the cost to process an invoice, you can save up to 70%. In terms of T&E report, 80%, 70%, cut a check, 59%. You can cut that days it takes you to 80%. So it just shows you some of the power. So just think about that. Put some numbers. Let's say instead of $15, it costs you $5. That's $10 an invoice. Where does that come right from? The bottom line to your company. Huge, huge, huge. And then cutting those checks as well. How about we shift away? We shift away to shift that to an ACH. $8 every single invoice that is processed that way. Discounts. How many discounts can we now capture? So amazing. Also some pain points. Staff time, handling supplier calls. We'll get into some more metrics there as well. How much time is spent on the phone handling supplier calls because they don't have the visibility that they need? So and again, we talked about visibility, collaboration barriers, AP automation. How much time can that help us save in terms of the amount of time my folks are spending on the phone and not adding, they're adding value in terms of maybe mitigating a potential issue with the supplier, but they're not really adding value to my bottom line directly. Frequency of late payments. Again, if you're not automated, you are going to, not only are you not going to get discounts, you're going to get penalties. So again, if you have that net 30, net 60 terms and you can't even hit that, you're going to start getting charged interest. And then this always amazes me, duplicate or mistaken payments that get out the door or paid twice, 3.5%. Just imagine that. The cash loss, 1.5%, doesn't seem a lot. Well, how many millions or tens of millions of dollars do you push through in terms of invoices? So in terms of making the business case for AP automation, it's not only about the number of invoices you process, it's also relative to the amount of dollars that are going through the door. So if you have these high dollar items and you're going to be able to save 1 to 2% on that invoice, wow, that's still a big number and makes that hurdle lower. Other pain points we talked about: lack of reporting and visibility, decentralized operation costs. So other can go on and on and on. And these pain points help you define your business case. If I use the right AP automation tool, which of these pain points can I eliminate? And then what is the dollar value associated with that? What is that business case? So I want to get into the cost of processing an invoice. So a lot of times people see that $15 and they're just blown away and they can't possibly imagine how that comes. So I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit here. And again, I mentioned the slides are going to be available to you. They are right now. You'll also get an email as well. So if I go a little bit too quickly here, I apologize. You might want to take a look at this afterwards. So I worked in a manufacturing environment. So what did we have? Like coming into an invoice, just matching into a PO, matching 3 or 5 way. You need to create an open accounts payable item in your accounting ERP system. What are the components of that piece? You have automated or manual PO matching. You have to create and post a GL entry. You have to process exception items. Those can be a huge cost. You have to have the approval of an open accounts payable item for payment. How is that done? On-site, mobile. Is that a manual process? Again, if it's not mobile, how much does that add to my invoice processing time? Does that cause me to miss discounts? And then we have workflow associated with that. Is it manual or automated? That manual workflow, slows things down? How do we automate that workflow? How do we minimize the number of people involved? Of course, we have to have separation of duties. Of course, we have that. But how can we automate that workflow? And you got to keep in mind on the exception side. You have to schedule the open accounts payable item for payment. Do you do that on site? Can you do that when you're on the road? What's the workflow associated with that? Approval of an accounts payable item for payment. Is that manual or automated? You have journal entries, workflows. You have to confirm the accounts payable item was paid, and you have to remove the open item via a journal entry, manual or automated journal entry, and workflow. So just taking a look at those components, you just think about that. There's probably a unique system or at least one person involved in each of the steps of these process. And one of the things that manual workflow and processing does is it adds another step in your process. So what does that do? It just inherently adds time and adds a place where errors can occur. So here's where I want to dig a little bit deeper in terms of the cost. So we talked about what is that cost component of, the processing invoice, but also the hours spent. This one blew me away. So a great report again from PayStream Advisors. They surveyed over 200 back office employees, went across industries and market segments. So for the person surveyed, how much time do you spend resolving AP process issues? So these are things that are causing problems, mistakes, exception items. Okay, hours spent. Okay, I spend 1 to 3 hours a week, 48 hours a week, 9 to 20 hours a week. Oh my, I would hate to be the person that spends half their time on the phone resolving those items. But look at the annual cost per employee here if we roll that up for a year. So let's say, 4 to 8 hours a week. 4 hours a week. That's $5,000 a person. So get your head around that. Also, here's another interesting way to think about this cost here. So just think about how many people are processing invoices at your company. So let's say you have 10 people processing invoices. Let's say they each spend 4 hours a week. So that gives me 40 hours. What does that give me if I can eliminate that? That's another FTE. So imagine what you could do at your company with another FTE. So imagine that. So this is just huge. And this is also, I don't see this included often in the making that business case. So let's talk about, everyone's like, oh man, you're bringing me down here, talking about all these headaches. So let's talk about how automation can cure some of these AP headaches. So in terms of AP automation, the key characteristics of that automation and the solutions as well that enable the automation is, in terms of what you might want to look for as well, we'll talk about more in depth about those. End-to-end, you want to support the entire invoice process. Again, we of course automated, but you want to mitigate the data entry and the user interaction. So the person who is either driving the system or who's interacting with the system, you want to have systems integrability. So obviously, in terms of the accounting side, the journal entries, you want to have that integrability with your existing ERP system or systems, but you also want to look for integrability with your other business systems. So for example, you may have data that needs to be fed into your system from your HR team for benefits and payroll. You're probably going to need some from your sales team for those commission calculations. So you want to make sure that AP solution offers that systems integrability and also automates the data that's going back and forth. You want to look for something that's quick to implement as well. Again, I mentioned this before. We'll go over a little bit of a timeline there of how that process works. But again, the systems in general used to take 1 to 2 years. Some of the AP automation solutions 1 to 2 weeks. Of course, you can have a great system, but if people don't use it, it doesn't matter. Sometimes people fall short on this. So in terms of defining the ROI of your AP automation solution, you need to track how often this is being used. So you want to make sure that the users that have access to this, they're still not trying to go out and do things their way in Excel, and they're not finding workarounds. Huge. I've seen this. In a similar point, So sometimes I see companies have these AP automation solutions, but they're not using all the functionality. So you want to have a close relationship with your solution provider. You want a partner that's going to work with you and understand how you can fully leverage their solution. So I see companies leaving money on the table. So here's an example. You have a Porsche, but it's a manual port. It's an automatic transmission. You're driving it 10 miles an hour. Drive your Porsche. Learn how it works. Get all you can out of it. Obviously you want to have a secure. It guarantees a high level of security of your data, has those audit trails, and this is key as well. These solutions are becoming pretty amazing in terms of the visibility, teamwork. There's chat functions in here. It just improves your relationships with vendors and teamwork. So how does that solution and the automation of those processes facilitate those better relationships? I won't spend much time on this. Again, this just shows some of the complications that can be involved in that AP process. If it's manual and these straight-through systems, can perform all these functions. You get that information, you can scan it in, you can capture it. Some of these solutions have smart doc recognition. Some have OCR technology. Some of the AP solutions out there actually have artificial intelligence, which blows my mind. You want to automate the workflows. You want mobile approval. So as you're going down the process, to your left, these are the things that happen. To the right, sometimes these are the things that make that process flow more smoothly. So you need to capture the information, the workflow, the requisition, the PO matching, what's your business process, and then what is your payment supplier access. That facilitates the workflow there. Requisition, we want to optimize that purchase order process. We want to enable that mobile approval. And then here's a slide that I like even better. So here it is. I would print this slide. And I have printed the slide, and I have it within my reach actually. So every time I talk about AP automation with my clients and Treasury colleagues, so this is fantastic. So this is the process. So you look at that workflow. So in terms of that automation solution, how does that solution impact all of these areas? How does it make it more efficient? As I just want to step back. If you've never gone through the process of mapping your AP process end-to-end in terms of people, process, and technology, you need to do that. When I was in Treasury, we had to do that for Sarbanes-Oxley, but this will be extremely valuable to your accounts payable team if you do this, the value that you offer. So you want to look at this, the capture. Okay, how do we make this more efficient? How do we get that information? We'd like to get that information electronically. We have a system that can identify, recognize. Again, workflow to code to post to geo. Certain payments methods automate this. So if you use purchase cards, for example, you can actually assign geo codes there and pull that into your ERP system. And then boom, journal entries are made. Approve that. How do we pay that? And then how do we export that data? So how do we close the loop? How do we use that information? So this is great. So again, what's the cat's meow here? Straight through processing. Touch less documents, less people, less systems, less manual intervention, less exceptions, and also we have to look at that exception automation workflow. So the key functionality that you want to look for if you're looking at that AP system, you want to have the documents captured. There's different ways to facilitate that. You want this automatic recognition. Again, there's a lot of different ways, a lot of components there. I'll let you delve into the details on there later after the presentation. You have that process workflow. You want to have a solution that enables dynamic decision and workflow, mobile approval. You want email notifications. So what you want to do is you want to set benchmarks for each step of the process so you can see an invoice moves from A to B. I want that to happen in 2 to 3 days. If things are getting caught, you need to get email notifications out to the people who are holding things up. And you want to try and automate that dispute management. Again, you want something that's going to facilitate electronic payments, and then you want that audit trail. And then you'll also want to have that search your reporting, which just allows you to optimize the strategic value of cash and improve those supplier relationships. And then we want to have that systems integrability with our ERP. So real quickly here, what does it look like? This is amazing. It can range for as low to 6 months for a few hours to 6 months. So it depends on the customization here. So this is a great timeline. So preparation, well, I don't really count this. I count this. This is on you, right? You need to be prepared for your project. So that goes on you. So I don't start the clock on my vendors until I'm ready to go. You need to understand what that means. Design the workflow, ERP implementation, training here, huge. These solution providers are fantastic in offering you training or making it self-serving training. So again, this can take as little as 6 hours. What is it that makes it more seamless? You. How prepared are you? How prepared is your team? How do you have a clear vision of what your workflow looks like, what you want it to be, what you need it to be? And so do your homework, and this implementation can be amazing. I've got some automation transition best practices. I'm going to go ahead and not cover these slides, but I wanted to offer them to you in the download, so you can make sure that these are something that you consider, because as soon as this should be part of your decision-making process. So how does that transition process take place? If you're trying to estimate the cost of implementing the system, you need to estimate those transition costs. And so in doing so, you need to make sure that you have all of these things handled. So when you're actually going through the process, you're going to mitigate those costs. So what's going to happen? As I report the ROI, I understand how to mitigate those transition costs. What is that going to do? It's going to improve the ROI, make you look like a rock star. So I want to talk about some KPIs to use for AP automation. So it's a good way for you to benchmark where you're at, where you need to be. In terms of KPIs, 2 key points. You certainly want to look at how you improve over time. So you want to have that climate of continuous improvement, but you also want to be benchmarking yourself in terms of your industry, your invoices, because in some industries it just inherently takes longer to process an invoice. The cost of an invoice is going to be bigger. One that I've seen is like folks in the airline industry. You're dealing with the government. Those are different metrics. So you want to compare apples to apples. So 5 KPIs. Again, a great slide to have. How good are you at your AP? Are you best in class? Are you lagging? What's your cost? Single invoice processing. We talked about that. We talked about the components. We'll talk about solutions to do that online. Single invoice processing time. How long does it take us? Is it 20 days, 30 days, 10 days? So you need to have reasonable goals, right? So if it takes you 30 days, you're not going to immediately get to 10 days probably. It's right after you implement your AP automation solution. However, you want to have that goal to get there. Okay, can I get from 30 days to 20 days? How do I get to 10 days? The number of invoices processed, again, per person, per AP professional, the gap between orders and invoices, and then documents in dispute per vendor. So how long does that take? How much time do we spend? We need our people to document how much time they spend on the phone on those disputes. What is the value of the time? And again, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to make someone fill out a time card. It just has to be something where people are cognizant of that. If I spend every week, I think about it. Every week, I put that number in. It's something I need to keep track of. And then also that can be a measurement of someone's success, even tied to their compensation. I want you to tell me how much time you're spending on the phone. We need to get that down. What can we do to help that go down? It can be in a departmental goal, right? Our departmental goal is to spend less than 4 hours a week as a department. Where are we at? As a department, we get a bonus if that's under 3 hours a week, 4 hours a week. So strategic outcomes of AP automation, ROI, I've talked through some of these already, but let's go ahead and get a polling question here. Just want to quickly benchmark where you are at the audience in terms of automating, in terms of AP automation. So I forgot to lay the groundwork sufficiently earlier, but there are probably those of you probably fall into 3 categories. You probably have pretty much no level of AP automation. You have some level of automation, and you want to learn more, and you want to make sure. And then thirdly is you are an AP automation guru, and you probably know more than I do. But so I want to make a point. Those of you in the third class that are already leveraging an AP automation solution, you should not be happy. You need to go out and look what's out there. So every year, every 6 months, you want to make sure that you have got the latest and greatest because the space is moving at light speed. So you want to look at what's the functionality, but what is that customer service like as well? And so I would say for me that would be a key differentiator. So it looks like what we have is we have 30% of you in the discovery phase, which is great, and 32% of you. I hope it's no or not applicable because it's applicable for everyone. So if you're on the webinar today, you need to be paying attention. I hope I've shown you the importance of AP automation at your company. So more specifically, what are the strategic outcomes? Eliminates duplicate payment of invoices, right to the bottom line if we're not going to get the money back. Eliminates suboptimal payments methods, improves supplier relationships, allows discounts to be captured, removes errors, manual input, mitigates payments fraud, improves internal controls, audit trails, transparency and visibility, allows more employees. Look at that. Wow, that's pretty darn compelling. If I take that into my CFO, he's going to be pretty darn impressed. So those are the components of your business case. So it's just some more metrics for you to consume to help you build your business case. Again, more metrics, time to produce. We have these three mainstream innovators. Look at this, 45 days. How many discounts are we getting? 0. Average processing costs. Again, that's $13 an invoice. Present, achieving discounts. We're losing money there. So that just shows some of the value. Again, you're looking at how to look at some of the savings impact specifically in terms of Ardent Partner Survey. All-in cost, after automation, that's $12 an invoice. Take a look at that. Roll that up. 6,000 AP monthly savings, $75,000. Where does that go, folks? Bottom line, you go into the CFO's office and say, if we improve AP automation, I'm going to get you an extra $75,000 every month. It's the gift that keeps on giving. What's the ROI of AP automation? These tools are absolutely fantastic. So you can go to the use website and actually play around with your total number of invoices, and it will give you an estimate of your annual cost savings. Tremendously valuable. I encourage you, if you're going to take an action from the webinar, here's one I suggest you take. I'll send you the presentation. There is a link there. Go, just look. And what you can do is you can go ahead and play around with the number of invoices. So when you're looking at that ROI, just think about how your company's going to grow. It makes sense here. Imagine if we go to 1,500. That number, what is that, 750? What does that number become? $250,000. We're going to get to $1 million really quick. These tools are really cool. So we talked, what are the other components? We talked about how much time does your company spend on the phone. So I went through that example. 20 people gets you an extra FTE. So 3 key components. Estimated cost savings. How much time is saved, impacted by AP automation. Number of hours saved. So the total number of hours it takes to process goes from 10 hours to 5 hours in certain times. What is the hourly rate for that person? Boom. Strategic value. Some of the value of hours saved times that productivity factor. So how much more can I get out of my employees? So what is that productivity impact here? How much am I paying that person? What's the ROI? What's your discount efficiency? So the business case for AP automation, my 10-step for an effective business case. You want to establish the key pain points your company is facing for your current AP process. So I've listed some of those out. Discount processes, costs, lack of visibility, cumbersome controls, manual intervention. And then you also have to communicate what is the cost to us of not addressing these issues. You want to accurately define the lay of the land. Issues need to be addressed in terms of people, process, and technology. You want to offer multiple solutions to address issues to show you've done your homework. You want to include a cost-benefit analysis that's easily defensible, accurate, and include potential impacts on the bottom line. You got to show them the money. Show me the money. In your executive summary, you want to concisely deliver the urgency, how it will be done, and what benefits will be realized. You have to know your constituency. Engage the people that you know are going to be your biggest people that don't want this to happen. Engage them up front. Take them out to lunch. Get them on board. Turn them into evangelists. You want to present with confidence and passion. It goes a long way. You need to clearly define the project roles, responsibility, and accountability with each stakeholder at your meeting to win that approval. Again, it's not about the investment in terms of the CFO, but also those who are impacted. You want to clearly communicate to people how the project fits together, and then you want to define success, measure it, communicate it. It doesn't stop when you implement the solution. Continue to report that ROI. Continue to report those metrics. What are those 5 KPIs I told you earlier? How are we making those better? Metrics, benchmarks, establish and maintain accountability. So, as we wrap up, learning objectives revisited. Calculate the potential rule of savings of AP Automates for your company. Check. Define the benefits of improved productivity across the enterprise. Check. Construct and communicate that effective business case. Check. Apologize for my quick pass through the effective business case part, but this is huge. Again, happy to speak with you about that after the webinar. Some additional resources. Please take a look. All fantastic. AP Payments Fraud and Control Survey. 2016 Invoice Automation Flow Report. Automating AP for mid-market, if you're a mid-market company. A great white paper, and the use website has some great resources. So I apologize that we don't have time for questions. I'm going to go ahead and launch our final polling question as I make my concluding comments. So again, any questions that I did not get to today, I'll go ahead and follow up with each of you directly, and I appreciate your consideration in staying on the line so we can get your feedback in terms of the quality of our webinar today, but also it gives you the opportunity to request being connected with me and or our webinar sponsor with just a few clicks of the mouse. So in closing, I have to once again thank our webinar partner. Their commitment to thought leadership is evident, not only in partnering with us in this webinar, but if you go to their website, you will see that commitment as well. They have a fantastic amount of resources out there that can be incredibly valuable to you. So finally, I would like to thank you, the audience, for your valuable time. If you have any questions about the content we covered during the webinar or treasuryjobs.com, please contact me at Ernie@treasuryjobs.com. Thank you very much. Make the rest of your day great, everyone.